Rhod.
What?
You're gonna have to assume your individual position.
I don't want one position, I want all positions.
The Fifth Element, 1997, by Luc Besson, does not simply stop at being a work of science fiction. It is a luxurious catwalk on a battlefield lit in neon, a grand opera of the future performed inside a flying taxi hunted by the police. For 2 hours straight, the audience is swept into a fluorescent whirlwind, both chaotic and dazzling, only to suddenly realize it is a story about love and redemption. Critics once fiercely condemned it. The audience, however, adored it, and nearly 30 years later, the film remains alive, still inspiring, like an indomitable monument of boundless imagination. Yet behind those glamorous frames and sounds echoing from the cosmos lies a stormy
They
creative
had dozens of
journey.
cameras, walls
A
written in a movie
script
full of
nurtured
wild
for more than
ideas.
2 decades. A hero and a villain who never once confront each other on screen.
It was
and
a
an iconic role that almost went to a musical legend if he had not refused to
every
wear the costume
dangerous.
design.
This one
especially
truly
for
went
him.
up in flames.
This is not merely the backstage, but the very fragments that forged the soul of the Fifth Element. Truths you may have never known. 1. The love triangle. Behind the spotlight. On screen, Diva Plavalaguna is a moment of pure cinema. An enormous alien being, her skin a deep shade of blue, carrying a voice that could melt stone and holding the elemental stones, the keys to saving the universe. Her singing is a magical fusion of classical opera and electronic pop, a sound seemingly from the future, at once inhuman and filled with profound sorrow. She stands as a symbol of hope and sacrifice, yet behind the elaborate makeup and the dazzling lights lay a quiet tragedy, one that seeped into that immortal performance. The woman beneath the heavy costume was Maïwenn Lebesco, a talented actress and the wife of director Luc Besson. He had handpicked his wife for this pivotal role, a decision that seemed full of romance. Every gesture, every glance of the diva was guided by Besson himself, sculpting a being both majestic and fragile. But a cruel irony unfolded in parallel. While directing his wife, Besson's heart was being drawn elsewhere, toward a 19-year-old unknown model from Ukraine, chosen out of 8,000 candidates to play Leeloo. Her name was Milla Jovovich. The relationship between Besson and Milla blossomed right on set. It began with lessons in the divine language, the fictional tongue Besson had created for the film. It grew during long nights spent revising the script, searching for the soul of Leeloo. Milla's energy, wild, innocent, powerful, yet fragile, captivated the director entirely. Their bond was intense and undeniable. Imagine this. Every day, Maïwenn sat for hours as makeup artists transformed her into the blue-skinned creature, donning a cumbersome, weighty costume to perform one of the film's most crucial scenes. And under those bright stage lights, she had to watch as her husband, the man of her life, fell deeper under the spell of a girl half her age. There were no public scandals, no loud confrontations, only a painful, silent shift in gravity that could not be undone. When filming wrapped, so too did the marriage of Besson and Maïwenn. Soon after, he went public with Milla Jovovich. The woman who embodied the keeper of the stones that could save the world had to stand behind the stage, powerless, as her own world collapsed. And in the final cut of the film, if you look closely, you can feel it. 2 women, both radiant, both unforgettable, each carrying a fracture of her own. 2. The largest indoor explosion in cinema. If one word could define the Fifth Element, it would be chaos. And nothing captured that chaos more vividly than the Opera House explosion on Planet Floston Paradise. In most films, a sequence like this would be achieved with miniatures or CGI. But Luc Besson was different. He wanted reality. He demanded a real explosion. The crew went to Pinewood Studios in London, home to one of the massive 007 stages. There, they built a full-scale section of the Opera House and rigged it with explosives. At the time, it became the largest indoor explosion ever filmed for a movie. The risk was immense. One chance only. If anything went wrong, one malfunctioning camera, one mistimed blast, one wrong light, everything would be wasted. To prepare, dozens of cameras were positioned at every angle. Walls were engineered to collapse in a controlled manner. Firefighters and safety experts waited outside, ready to intervene in seconds if necessary. And then, when the call of action was shouted and the button pressed, the entire soundstage shook. A massive fireball erupted, tearing apart the stage, blasting debris into the air. It was perfect. It was insane. It was dangerous. And it became legend. A testament to Besson's recklessness. In a film overflowing with outrageous ideas, this was the one that truly ignited. It embodied his filmmaking philosophy. Why fake it when you can do it for real? Why rely on effects when you can blow up an actual opera house? That pursuit of authenticity, even in the most fantastical setting, gave The Fifth Element its weight. 3. Ruby Rhod and the Shadow of Prince. Ruby Rhod was not merely a character, but a whirlwind. A whirlwind of leopard print, blazing blonde hair, languid gestures and screams sharp enough to pierce glass. He was an intergalactic media star, a flamboyant DJ, stealing every frame he appeared in. Yet few know this. The role nearly belonged to a true king. Before Chris Tucker turned Ruby Rhod into an icon, Luc Besson had written the character for one man alone, Prince. Picture it for a moment, Prince. The ultimate symbol of androgyny, the sovereign of style, a musical genius with a voice and aura unmatched. Prince was born to be Ruby Rhod. When he received the script, he was intrigued. The film's delirious madness fascinated him. A meeting was arranged in Paris. Jean-Paul Gaultier, the legendary designer, had prepared bold sketches for Ruby Rhod's costumes, sheer bodysuits, lace, daring cutouts, and sparkling high heels. In his excitement, Gaultier explained in broken English, "It's like lots of straps, fishnets, and assless chaps." Prince, a man famous for breaking every rule of fashion, merely smiled and said nothing. Days later, Prince's manager called Besson. "Luc, I don't know what you told him, but he's not going to do it." The reason was blunt. The costumes were too extreme, too feminine, even for Prince. Besson was crushed. His dream of Ruby Rhod infused with Prince's spirit evaporated. The production scrambled to find a replacement, and then came Chris Tucker. A young comedian with an entirely different kind of energy. Not Prince's sensual mystery, but manic speed, hyperactivity, and a shrill, unmistakable voice. Tucker seized the role and made it his own, fusing Michael Jackson's dance moves with Prince's eccentric flair, creating a high-pitched scream machine unlike anything seen before. But if you look closely, you can still sense Prince's shadow embedded in Ruby Rhod's DNA. For this character was not written for Chris Tucker. He was written for a king. 4. The ZF-1. Nearly set the set on fire, Zorg's ZF-1 was the ultimate weapon dream. A destructive machine packing a machine gun, rockets, electric nets, poison darts, a freeze spray canister, and above all, a flamethrower. And the flamethrower was real. The props team, in their pursuit of maximum authenticity, built a fully functioning ZF-1 with an actual flame system. But during one test on set, things went out of control. Gary Oldman pulled the trigger. Instead of shooting straight forward, a massive jet of fire blasted upward, licking the scaffolding and the ceiling. Fireproof fabric began to smoke. Screams erupted. Crew members scrambled for extinguishers. Fortunately, the blaze was put out in time and no one was hurt. But the message was crystal clear. The Fifth Element was not a safe production. Even the props carried deadly risk. And that was exactly how Luc Besson liked it. He wanted chaos that could be felt, danger that could be seen. Rather than frightening the team, the accident reinforced their spirit. They were creating something wild, reckless, and unpredictable. The ZF-1, like the film itself, was a complex machine, prone to losing control, yet delivering unforgettable results. It stood as a symbol of a filmmaking spirit nearly extinct in the age of digital effects, a time when physical risk was part of the art itself. 5. The dream of a 16-year-old. Born into a universe. Before there were flying taxis, before Jean-Paul Gaultier designed thousands of bizarre costumes, before explosions shook the soundstage, it all began with a quiet boy in a small French village. Luc Besson. He was not born into an artistic family. His parents were scuba diving instructors, and his childhood belonged to the sea. He had no TV, few friends. What he had was isolation and an imagination without limits. At 16, to escape boredom and loneliness, Besson began to write. Not a screenplay, a world, a place to escape. He created an unlucky taxi driver named Corbin Dallas. He invented a perfect being with flaming orange hair, Leeloo. He drew a ruthless arms dealer named Zorg. He sketched cities floating in the sky, alien races, stories within stories. It was his private universe, where everything had order and meaning, the opposite of the real world around him. That notebook stayed with him for decades. It took more than 20 years for the refuge of a teenage boy to become a film project. When it did, it became a monster. At the time, the most expensive European film ever made, with a budget of $90 million. A colossal gamble. Yet beneath the madness of the images, beneath the laser battles and comic dialogue, remained the soul of that lonely 16-year-old, writing his way to freedom. At its core, with all its chaos and colour, the film is about connection. About a lonely man, Corbin, who discovers purpose when a stranger, Leeloo, crashes into his life. It is a mirror of Besson himself, a lonely boy who found connection and meaning by creating an entire universe of his own. 6. The torture. Costumes. Jean-Paul Gaultier designed over 1,000 costumes for the fifth element, each one a work of art. But that artistry demanded suffering. Let's begin with the Mondoshaans, the towering, clumsy aliens at the film's opening. On screen, they looked like golden robots. In reality, they were actors stuffed into foam and rubber suits weighing nearly 40 kilograms. Inside, there was no ventilation system. It was like wearing armour and running a marathon in a steam room. Their slow movements were not an artistic choice, they were simply trying not to collapse. During filming, one actor actually fainted from heat exhaustion. He had to be pulled out of the suit, rehydrated, and stabilised. Those heavy, majestic steps you see on screen were, in truth, a fight for survival. And then there was Chris Tucker. His iconic leopard print outfit for Ruby Rhod had a rigid frame running down the spine to maintain its shape. That meant Tucker could not sit. He could not bend. He could only breathe. Between takes, while everyone else rested in chairs, he had to lean against a wall or special planks. For days he endured sweat and back pain, yet on screen none of that was visible. All the audience saw was a storm of energy, shouting, dancing, stealing every scene. Sometimes, the loudest voice in the galaxy comes from a man who cannot even sit down. These sacrifices gave the film a physicality that digital effects could never replicate. Viewers could feel the weight of the Mondoshawan armour, the confinement of Ruby Rhod's costume, and that is what made the world of the fifth element feel alive. Not just a digital dream, but something that seemed to truly exist. 7. The hero and the villain. Never meet. In Hollywood, there is an unspoken rule. The hero and the villain must eventually face each other. A duel, a battle of wits, the final showdown. But Luc Besson tore that rule apart and threw it away. Across the full 2 hours and 6 minutes of the fifth element, Corbin Dallas, Bruce Willis, the hero, and Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, Gary Oldman, the villain, never share a single moment together. No conversation, no glance, not even the same space at the same time. This was not a coincidence of filming schedules, but a deliberate artistic decision. Besson wanted their conflict to unfold indirectly, like a chain reaction. Zorg sends the Mangalores to steal the stones, an act that places Corbin in danger. Corbin protects Leeloo, an act that ruins Zorg's plans. They are like two celestial bodies in the same solar system, their orbits constantly interfering and disrupting one another, but never colliding. Zorg dies alone on his spaceship, undone by the very bomb he intended for others. Corbin never even knows who Zorg is, nor how he dies. He is too occupied with saving the world and holding on to Leeloo. This choice created a strange and effective tension. The villain was not a single person Corbin had to defeat, but a force, greed, destruction, embodied through Zorg. By stripping away the traditional showdown, Besson elevated the conflict to a more abstract level, proving that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who never lays eyes on you. It broke the classic three-act structure, but reinforced the film's core theme. In a vast and chaotic universe, the most important battles are not always fought face to face. Sometimes, victory simply means surviving the ripples caused by the enemy and protecting what you love. 8. Milla Jovovich, the true action heroine. Leeloo was not just the perfect being, she was the ultimate weapon, a whirlwind of punches and gravity-defying kicks, and much of that ferocity came directly from Milla Jovovich herself. While many actors leaned on stunt doubles for dangerous sequences, Milla was determined to perform most of Leeloo's action scenes on her own. She underwent months of grueling training, studying karate, kickboxing, and wire work. Think of the iconic hallway fight, where Leeloo single-handedly defeats a squad of heavily armed Mangalore guards. That was not CGI. And for most of it, it was not a stunt double in an orange wig. It was Milla. She executed the spinning kicks, the flips, and endured dozens of exhausting takes. Her dedication pushed the boundaries of what was expected of a leading actress. She accepted bruises and cuts to bring absolute authenticity, because for the fifth element to truly work, its ultimate weapon had to bleed, to fight, and to fall with human grit. This commitment not only produced stunning action, but it defined Leeloo as a character. Her strength did not just come from programmed DNA, it came from the sweat and effort of Milla Jovovich. When you see Leeloo fight, you are not just watching a character, you are witnessing Milla's devotion, and that made her victory all the more meaningful. 9. Mel Gibson almost became Corbin Dallas. Cinema history is full of what-ifs, and the fifth element carries its own. We've spoken of Prince and Ruby Rhod, but what about the lead role? Before Bruce Willis signed on, the studio had a plan B for Corbin Dallas, Mel Gibson. Picture it. Mel Gibson, fresh off the global triumph of Braveheart, a box office powerhouse. But his energy was entirely different. More serious, more intense, less humorous. Had Gibson played Corbin, the character might have been a darker, colder action hero, carrying a heavier, tragic weight. Luc Besson hesitated. He felt Gibson's energy was not the right fit. What he needed was someone who could wade through chaos, yet still crack a dry smile or mutter a sarcastic line in the middle of it all. He needed an everyman, a man tired of the world, not a warrior forever ready for battle. He needed Bruce Willis. Willis, already immortalized as John McClane in Die Hard, was the perfect match. He could embody both the reliable action hero and the grumbling cab driver stuck with bad luck. He gave Corbin Dallas humanity, a vulnerability Mel Gibson might never have captured. Willis said yes, and everything shifted. Corbin Dallas became the reluctant hero, weary, unlucky, yet driving his taxi straight into destiny. With Gibson, the film might have been cooler perhaps, but certainly less fun. With Bruce, it soared. 10. The Divine Language, a Code of Love. The alien tongue spoken by Leeloo, known as the Divine Language, was not random gibberish improvised on set. From the very beginning, Luc Besson had meticulously crafted it into a fully developed conlang, with its own grammar and a vocabulary of over 400 words. He handed Milla Jovovich a dictionary of the language to study. Together, they practiced it, refined it, and even played with it. And as their off-screen relationship deepened, the language took on an unexpected role. It became their love code. Love letters, private notes between them, were written in the divine language, a tongue no one else on the set could decipher. They whispered it to each other between takes, transforming words created for a fictional universe into the medium of a real romance. That romance did not last. They divorced after a few years, but the language remained, immortalized in the film. On screen, every syllable Milla uttered was not arbitrary. It flowed, carefully rehearsed, and carried deeply personal meaning. Alien on screen, intimate in life. This invisible yet emotional layer added a depth you could not see but could feel. When Leeloo spoke, there was sincerity, a familiarity in her tone. Because for Milla, it was never just lines from a script. It was part of her own love story. 11. Gary Oldman, taking the role in blind faith. Gary Oldman never auditioned. He did not chase the part of Zorg. He accepted almost instantly for one reason: friendship. Years earlier, Luc Besson had backed Nil by Mouth, the raw and personal film directed by Oldman himself. It was a difficult, uncompromising project, but Besson had put his trust in him. So when Besson called and said, "Gary, I need you to play the villain in my crazy sci-fi film," Oldman answered with an immediate yes. It was his way of repaying the debt. Ironically, Oldman later admitted that he had no idea what the film was about and even disliked it. Yet he still put on the bizarre plastic headpiece, stepped into Zorg, and delivered one of the most eccentric and beloved villains of the 1990s. His Zorg was both funny and terrifying, with a strange southern accent and exaggerated mannerisms. It was proof of Oldman's extraordinary talent, the ability to enter a world he didn't understand and still bring to life a character utterly convincing and unforgettable. This story also revealed another truth about filmmaking, that sometimes personal loyalty and trust can lead to the most unexpected and remarkable artistic collaborations. 12. Over 1,000 costumes by Jean-Paul Gaultier. Luc Besson did not want costumes to be just clothes. He wanted fashion to tell the story. And to achieve that, he called on Jean-Paul Gaultier, the enfant terrible of French couture. The result was not a handful of standout outfits. Gaultier created over 1,000 costumes, all handcrafted, all unique. He devised a complete aesthetic code for each race and social class. The Mondashauans wore massive golden armor inspired by pyramids. The Mangalores, mercenaries, were clad in chaotic combinations of metal, leather, and brutality. Zorg's employees wore rigid, near-fascist uniforms. Even the airport staff had distinct outfits with bold cuts. Flight attendants wore tight neoprene corsets. The McDonald's workers of the future had their own designed uniforms. Even background extras passing by the screen for 2 seconds were dressed in custom outfits. Gaultier personally checked hundreds of costumes each shooting day. Every seam, every stitch was part of the world building. In The Fifth Element, no words were necessary. You only had to look. And what you saw was a universe dressed for war, like a futuristic runway turned deadly. The Besson-Gaultier collaboration became a rare fusion of cinema and haute couture, creating a world both alien and eerily familiar, as if you were watching a fashion show from another century. 13. Booed at Cannes, embraced worldwide. The Fifth Element was chosen to open the 50th Cannes Film Festival, a rare honour. The cast and crew walked the red carpet in glamour, flashes popping from every direction. Then the theatre went dark. The film began. And when the lights came back up, the first reaction was not applause but boos. Critics called it a disaster. They dismissed it as silly, shallow, noisy, a chaotic mess without meaning. Some mocked it as nothing more than a cheap Hollywood knockoff made by the French. The press conference afterward was tense, with Luc Besson forced to defend his vision against skeptical, cutting questions. And yet, something strange happened when the film reached general audiences. Viewers, especially the young, responded in the exact opposite way. They didn't care about the critics' sneers. They were enthralled by the neon-drenched world, the humour, the sheer energy of it all. They quoted Ruby Rhod's lines by heart. They obsessed over Leeloo's blazing orange hair. They rewound and replayed the diva opera scene on their VHS tapes. The negative reviews faded into obscurity, while audience love grew stronger, spreading year after year. The Fifth Element became a cult classic, not despite its weirdness, but because of it. What Canitz rejected, the world embraced. And history proved a truth. Sometimes, the critics are wrong. A film's real life lies not in the opening night reviews, but in the connection it builds with its audience. A connection strong enough to outlast prejudice and endure for decades. Think of the great sci-fi films before The Fifth Element. Blade Runner, Alien. What did they share? Darkness, cold metallic corridors, cities drenched in rain and smoke, dim lights. Luc Besson looked at that unwritten rule and went the other way. He declared, "The future doesn't have to be cold and dark. It can be bright and full of colour." He made a bold choice. Most of the action would take place in dazzling daylight. The flying taxi chase unfolded under a deep blue sky. Gunfights erupted in stark white hallways, so brightly lit that nothing could be hidden. Explosions of orange fire bloomed against glowing golden clouds. This was a massive technical gamble. Strong light reveals everything, every flaw in the effects, every wrinkle in the costumes, every imperfection. But that was the point. Besson wanted the audience to see the future, not squint to imagine it. By doing so, he broke one of sci-fi's oldest rules. He did not make it dark. He made it shine. The result was a unique aesthetic that made The Fifth Element stand out from countless other sci-fi films. It brought a sense of optimism, a playful energy, to a genre often obsessed with gloom and decay. It was a powerful artistic statement. The future may be chaotic, even dangerous, but it doesn't have to lose its colour or its joy. Thank you for watching. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the next video. See you soon.